Was anyone else surprised a few years back to hear that a science fiction movie actually won Best Picture for the first time ever? I definitely was. Well, we're gonna check it out now. This is 2017's The Shape of Water. Spoiler alert, while I might be giving you my opinions on the film, that's no substitute for watching it for yourself. Links to the film are in the description. As we traverse an underwater scene, we hear Giles speak to us about the majestic story we're about to witness. Suddenly, we see Elisa sleeping in the middle of the flooded room, and as Giles continues talking, everything seems to start to settle down as the alarm clock rings. Suddenly, the room is normal, and she wakes up to the resounding sound. Some sounds flood into the room, but others are muffled. The muffled sounds are actually from the theater that her apartment sits over. As she goes about her normal daily routine, we see that everything she does is to a T, and she eventually leaves to go to work. Soon she shows up at Giles' apartment, and we find out that she is actually there to assist and take care of him. We also find out that she's a mute. Elisa heads to the bus stop where she catches a ride to the research center that she works at. When she goes inside, she finds out that her friend Zelda actually held her spot by the time clock. They head to the locker room to get dressed for work, and the two of them get to work cleaning the entire facility. When you think about the size of the facility and the contents in it, this starts to look like a kind of job that would be a nightmare to have. How much good is she really doing with that little feather duster against the likes of that turbine engine? And Elisa over here with a tiny scraper to get off every bit of goo on the ground. These are common household cleaning products. Where are the industrial cleaning things? As the two make their way through the facility, they come to a special research lab where Mr. Fleming introduces Dr. Robert. He tells the crew that the new asset they're about to receive could be the most sensitive asset this facility has ever had. With that, a giant vat is brought into the lab by a Mr. Strickland. When Elisa walks by the tank of water, she can hear howling come from inside. She places her hand on the tank and she seems to be answered by some sort of aqua creature. It cries out to Elisa, but Fleming escorts the woman out of the lab. Later, Giles gives Elisa a ride to get pies for breakfast. When they get back to the apartment, Giles seems caught up in the pie guy, and the two of them end up tap dancing from the couch as they watch dancing specials on the TV. The next morning, Elisa goes about her normal routine, and she gets to work with Zelda. While working in the boys' bathroom, they're joined by Strickland, who just goes about his business while keeping conversation going. He's gotta be one of the most uncomfortable villains I've seen in a while. He hasn't officially been introduced as the villain, but you can just tell that about certain people. Strickland is one of them. For one thing, he washes his hands before going to the bathroom and not after. That's psychotic. After that weird encounter, Elisa and Zelda go about their business with the rest of the facility. But when they get close to the research lab, they hear screaming and gunshots. Suddenly, Strickland stumbles out of the lab with a massive wound. Later, Fleming grabs the two women to take them to the lab to clean up all of the blood. When Elisa starts to clean, she ends up finding two of Strickland's fingers under a cabinet. When Zelda goes to report it to someone, Elisa comes face to face with the creature that is being held there. When Elisa gets back to the apartment, she tells Giles about the creature, and he heads out to see if he can get paid for his project. The next day, Elisa makes her way back to the lab where the creature is being held, and she finds that it is chained up in a giant tub. She sits down to eat her eggs with it, and she even shares one with it. I know that this is a love story and all that, but first and foremost, it is a science fiction movie. So I have to say that the design of the creature is absolutely phenomenal. As it came out of the water, I was just taken aback by every inch of detail. Not to mention, the creature is played by none other than Doug Jones. He definitely has all the experience of playing an Aquaman since his time in Hellboy. After this lovely lunch, Elisa and Zelda get called into Strickland's office where his role here becomes even more clear. Remember how I said he hadn't been introduced as the villain yet? Well, after this conversation, if you don't see him as the villain, you might want to reevaluate how you look at things. He's just downright offensive in every calm way, and he warns the woman about the creature. Afterwards, we see the creature looking over the eggshells Elisa left by the tub, and we see that he actually does the sign language for egg. Meanwhile, Elisa rests peacefully as she makes her way back home. The next day, we see Strickland get dropped off at his house, and his family welcomes him. He also gives his family a certain kind of welcome, but that's for you to find out about. Back at the lab, Elisa starts to clean the lab as the researchers leave, and she sets up a little lunch date for her and her new aqua friend. She even ends up teaching him what music is and how to say it in sign language. She even starts to dance around while she's in the lab with him. She messes up though, and the doctor actually spots her interacting with the creature without her knowing. Well, we know Strickland will find out about this and things will go sideways, but there's still so much of the movie left. I can't imagine that's gonna be it. When we follow the doctor to a quarry, we find out that he's actually a Russian spy, and he's taken by his fellow countrymen to his boss where he gives him as many notes as he can about the creature. He also tells him that he thinks the creature can communicate and has more intelligence than they originally anticipated. The next day is just the same as always, but she finds out about how the other workers move the cameras so they can create a blind spot. When she goes to check on her creature friend, she finds him chained up in the middle of the floor, and she drops an egg as she tries to help him. Suddenly, she hears Strickland coming back in, and she hides around the corner. Strickland tortures the creature, but he eventually comes across the egg on the floor. Suddenly, General Hoyt shows up to see the creature in person. This is where things get interesting and tough. Obviously, Strickland appeals to the general's more aggressive nature, but Dr. Robert, who is a Russian spy, tries to do everything he can to keep the creature alive. He even spots Elisa hiding behind the tanks. He knows. He can use this information in so many different ways, but in the end, it comes down to who uses Elisa to get to the creature and to what end. After the show and tell, Dr. Robert tries to plead his case to the general, but Elisa finds out that Strickland actually gets his way instead, as General Hoyt tells him to crack the creature open to find out how much they can. When Elisa gets home, she tries to convince Giles to help her kidnap the creature and hide him there. Obviously, Giles is not keen on the idea, but she does not back down from the idea. She explains that the creature is the first person to simply see her for who she is and not know how broken she actually is. He leaves her behind to try and get his job back, but after getting brushed off, he goes to the diner to get pie and opens up to the pie guy. When he comes on to the pie guy, he finds out that his advances are not welcome, and he witnesses just how cruel the pie guy can be. After this, Giles goes to Elisa and he explains how they are all they have in the world, so he agrees to help her. So we've got a mute woman and a failed gay artist. This is next level Avengers here. On top of that, Dr. Robert meets with his boss and he finds out that Russia would rather just kill the creature so the Americans can't learn anything than save it. So I think it's safe to say that he'll help somewhere along the line. All they need now is Zelda. She'll take everyone out if they get in the way. The next day, Elisa starts scoping out the facility for her plan, and she goes over things with Giles. Then it's game time, but Strickland ends up calling Elisa to the office so he can talk to her. He explains to her that he actually gets going a little at the thought of her not being able to make any noise.
I bet I can make you squawk a little.
It's time to run! Why doesn't she have a rape whistle? I feel like she should have one for sure. As she runs out of there, we see Dr. Robert getting the injection ready for the creature in the bathroom. Elisa rushes to get things ready for Giles to get there, and Dr. Robert even tries to appeal to Strickland before the procedure goes on. While in there, he notices that the camera is being moved from the loading dock, and he finds Elisa trying to take the creature from the tub. He simply gives her the keys to free the creature, and he tells her everything she needs to know to keep him alive and healthy. He warns her that she has 5 minutes until the power goes out. Meanwhile, Zelda notices that Elisa hasn't clocked out, so she goes ahead and clocks her out anyway. When she confronts her at the loading dock, she tries to reason with her. The entire plan starts to fall apart as the guard notices that Giles' credentials are fake. Suddenly, the power goes out and the plan moves forward. As Giles, Elisa, and the creature make it out of the facility, Dr. Robert and Zelda head back inside. Strickland and his backup make it there just in time to see Giles run into his brand new Cadillac, and he even gets a few shots off. There was something satisfying about watching Giles hit that Cadillac. Somehow, the ragtag group actually made it out of there and to the bathtub at their apartment. I'm not entirely sure how long they expect a bathtub to really work, but I guess it's a start. Back at the apartment, Elisa checks the weather to see that it is supposed to rain on the 10th, and that is when she plans to release the creature at the docks. The next day at work, Elisa pretends like she doesn't know anything, but new security measures are put into effect. Strickland and his task force believe that it was a trained task force of at least 10 men that pulled this stunt off. Zelda and Elisa get pulled into Strickland's office to answer a few questions, but this proves to be uneventful. Back at the apartment, the creature decides to take a walk around the apartment while Giles takes a nap. He ends up finding the apartment cat, but when Giles yells at him to stop, the creature runs out of the apartment. This is what they call a worst-case scenario. This could not be any worse of a situation to be in. When Elisa is done with work, she comes home to find out what happened, and she heads out to find the creature. She follows a trail of bloody handprints, and she finds herself inside the Orpheum Theater, where the creature is standing in the middle of the rows watching a movie. When she gets him back to the apartment, the creature shows that he is sorry for causing Giles pain, and Elisa helps clean up up his wound. When Elisa gets the creature back to the tub, she notices that her touch actually activates some sort of excitement and bioluminescence in the creature. When he reaches out and touches her back, she gets a little hot and bothered. I think this is part of why some people found this movie odd. Elisa leaves the bathroom to go handle herself, but when she realizes that she doesn't want to, she goes back and takes off her clothes before closing the curtain on the two of them. Now, I'm no detective, but it doesn't take one to know when someone is getting freaky. Apparently today was Freaky Fish Friday for Elisa. To each their own, but she can definitely keep this fetish to herself. I won't kink shame though. When Elisa gets back to work, Zelda tries to find out why she's so happy.
How? Does he have a...
This is more than I ever needed to know about ancient creature anatomy. Soon, Dr. Robert gets a visit from his boss and associate, and he can tell that they suspect something. Back at Strickland's house, he seems to notice something wrong with the fingers that got sewn back on, and he doesn't seem to look so good. When we see Elisa and the creature again, she's getting ready to flood the bathroom to get it on again. This ends up causing it to rain on the guests in the theater below. When Giles wakes up, he notices that he is actually healed from when the creature touched him. He goes next door to see why there is water everywhere, and he opens the bathroom door to see what's going on. He promptly closes the door and goes back to his own apartment. Back at Dr. Robert's apartment, he finds out that he is being extracted back to Russia in 48 hours, and he sees that he's being followed by Fleming. I'd honestly be surprised if he makes it 48 hours. I don't think any of them will last another 24 actually, especially if Elisa keeps flooding the apartment every time she wants to get it on. Suddenly, the rains come in and Elisa knows that it is almost time to set him free. Back at the facility, Strickland is actually feeling worse, but he has a visit from General Hoyt. General Hoyt is very forward in his message for Strickland to fix his mess, and he feels the pressure that's on him for sure. On top of that, he can see that his two fingers are dead and infected now. Back at the apartment, we see that it's in fact the day that Elisa originally planned to release the creature, and the rains are definitely right on time. They sit down to have another breakfast, and Elisa imagines herself singing a beautiful message to the creature. When she goes to work, Zelda catches her crying in the locker room, and Zelda comes over to see that the creature is actually sick. Zelda calls Dr. Robert for help, but he is on his way to be extracted. Once at the extraction point, he ends up getting shot down by his comrades, but Strickland shows up in time to gun down the Russians before torching the truth out of Dr. Robert. Before he dies, he tells Strickland that there isn't a strike team, the culprit's just clean. Next we see Zelda answering the door to Strickland, and he demands her to tell him where the creature is. Strickland is running around with the crazy person strength right now. I'd probably just tell him everything, then call Elisa to get the hell out of the apartment with the creature. Save myself, but still not give him everything he wants. Sure enough, Zelda's husband is actually the one that tells him what happened, and Strickland heads out to get Elisa. Zelda quickly calls Elisa to warn her, and next we see Strickland breaking down the door to her apartment. He looks around, but he only finds a tub full of the creature's scales. He tears the apartment apart until he finds out about the docs on the calendar, and we cut to Giles and Elisa as they take the creature to the water. The friends say their goodbyes, but Strickland shows up and shoots the creature and Elisa down as she tries to tell him that he has to go without her. Giles knocks out Strickland with a board, and he heads over to check on Elisa. Once he realizes that she's dead, the creature starts to heal itself and slices Strickland's throat with his own claw before the police arrive. He comes back to Elisa and takes her from Giles. The two of them jump into the water, and he kisses the scars on her throat. As his healing power does its thing, her scars turn to gills, and they hold each other in the water. Then the credits roll. The hybrid sex aside, this was a phenomenal story. Obviously not original, but still beautifully told and well deserving of its Best Picture award. Give it a shot. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more like this one. Comment what you think I should watch next, and I'll see you in the next video.